How much would you pay for a book the most? $30? $50? How about $31 million? In 1994, Bill Gates bought one of the Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, the Codex Leicester, for $30.8 million. But what makes this notebook so expensive? What makes Da Vinci's work so important? Let's check it out. First, I will take you to the year of 1452. Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II was busy building a fortress called Rumeli Hisarı, as he was going to use this to conquer Constantinople 1 year later. Incas were ruling in South America. Aztecs were living among those gorgeous pyramids in Central America. Aborigines were living in peace in beautiful nature of Australia. And Christopher Columbus hadn't landed on America yet. It would be 41 years later. In 1452, many different native tribes were living across North America. Meanwhile, in Ancona, Tuscany, near the town of Vinci in Florence, a baby was born to an unmarried couple, Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci's father, Ser Piero, was an attorney and notary. From his father's relationships, Leonardo ended up having 17 half-siblings. Very busy man indeed. His mother, Caterina, was a peasant. One theory says that she was a slave who came from North Africa. Another study states that she was a 16-year-old orphan from a neighborhood town. And this is why she was married off to a farmer after a short time Leonardo's birth in order to avoid awkward situations. Beginning around age 5, Da Vinci started to live on the estate in Vinci that belonged to the family of his father. Da Vinci's uncle, who was also really keen on nature, just like Leonardo, was a very big support for him. Yes, Da Vinci was going to be famed as an artist, inventor, engineer, and thinker, but in the beginning he was trained as a musician. Did you know that he played lyre? And he was homeschooled, did not receive any formal education at all. Actually, I find this part of story pretty inspiring. Did you know the inventor and great engineer Leonardo da Vinci did not know any advanced math or physics until he was 30 years old? Wow. Never too late, guys. Never too late. Appreciating his son's talents, Ser Piero apprenticed his son to noted sculptor and painter Andrea del Verrocchio of Florence. Leonardo was just 15 years old then. This was the time Leonardo realized he was, I'm sure I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but ambidextrous, meaning he was able to use both hands at the same time with the same efficiency. These type of people only make up 1% of the population. Leonardo was a very good-looking and graceful young man. Rumor has it he might have posed for Verrocchio's delicate, curly-haired bronze David. You know, apprentices usually stay for a few years and then they leave, but Da Vinci was going to stay there for almost 10 years. And the reason he left Verrocchio's workshop was probably he was scared for his life. Yep. And you know why? Because he was almost executed. In 1476, when he was 24, he was arrested for sodomy charges, together with several of his male companions. Sodomy meant homosexual activity then, and it was punishable by death in 15th century in Florence. No witnesses came forward, so the case was dismissed. But this was going to affect his relationship with his father in the future. Leonardo had started his first commission work, the Adoration of the Magi, for Florence's San Donato e Scoppetto Monastery, and also an altar painting for St. Bernard's Chapel in Palazzo della Signoria was about to begin. But suddenly he abandoned those works and left Florence for Milan in 1483. Milan had a more strict academic atmosphere then, which very well suited his personality. In Milan, he was listed in the register of the royal household as painter and engineer of the Duke. Very cool. He was reserved and really kind to others. He would dress in style. He worked as a painter and sculptor and designer of court festivals, but also people were consulting him about technical issues in architecture, military matters, or engineering stuff. During his 17 years in Milan, he completed 7 works, beside his engineering work, of course. The first one is, between 1483 and 1486, he worked on an altar painting, Virgin of the Rocks. For 10 years, there would be a legal fight, for unknown reasons, between Da Vinci and the Confraternity of the Immaculate Conception, who was the commissioner. 10 years. 10 long years, can you imagine, over an altar painting. This dispute caused Leonardo to paint another version of the same painting in 1508. Let's look and see if there are any differences. What was this fight about? I think the figures look more like an angel right now, that's it. 10 years of fight for this. Interesting. He also made one of his most famous paintings, Last Supper, in Milan, between 1495 and 1498. Last Supper is an interesting one. If you watched or read Da Vinci Code, you will know what I mean. Well, if you don't, let's have a closer look, I will explain. This painting represents Jesus and 12 apostles, a figure that created the superstition that number 13 is an unlucky number. Who knew? This painting depicts the Passover dinner during which Jesus Christ said, "One of you shall betray me." Every apostle has a very distinct expression in this wall painting. The hand that is holding the knife is the hand of the traitor, and due to optical illusion here, it is hard to determine the owner of the hand. Judas is holding a small purse, which likely to have silver coins, a price received for betrayal, maybe? Does this M mean Mary Magdalene, a woman who traveled with Jesus as one of his followers? If not Mary Magdalene, then this is definitely John. And John has a feminine appearance in this painting, but this is how the young men looked those days. If you look at one of Da Vinci's latest paintings, John the Baptist has a quite feminine look. There were some speculations about who the model was for this painting, so we will talk about that in a bit. Let's go back to Milan with Da Vinci. In 1498, he did another amazing, huge painting for, are you ready for me butchering Italian? For a Sala delle Ece in Milan Castello Sforzesco. And we shouldn't forget the grand sculpture project, the real reason why he was invited to Milan in the first place by the royal family, a bronze 16 feet high horse sculpture to be erected in honor of Francesco Sforza, the founder of Sforza dynasty. So Da Vinci worked on this for 12 years, and this is going to break your heart. The clay model of finished work was put in public display in 1493, but just right before the metal was poured on it, the war broke and they had to use the bronze, the metal, to make weapons. So 12 years of work went into trash. When your Word document is closed without saving next time, think about this story and feel thankful. By the way, remember this story because it might come up later. In 1499, French invaded Milan. Sforza family fled. Then Da Vinci fled first to Venice, then to Florence. Such nice cities to fled to. In Florence, Da Vinci painted maybe his most famous ever painting, La Gioconda, or with the name that you know, Mona Lisa. This 21 by 31 inch work was done between 1503 and 1505. Her smile has been a great mystery, and I never understood why. Yes, she's smiling like any other, paintings that time. But it was her smile that inspired a lot of painters afterwards. So I guess that was a mysterious and a magical smile. This painting was special for 2 reasons. One, Leonardo was the first one who put the nature in the backgrounds of the portraits. Before him, All of them were inside the palace or had a solid background. And number 2, the technique called sfumato, to tone down or to evaporate like a smoke. When you look at the scenery behind Mona Lisa, you see that after a while, all the nature looks like they are actually fading and they're combining with whatever near them. Also, the same thing happens to Mona Lisa's hair. This is a very special technique that Leonardo da Vinci used. So who was actually Mona Lisa? So there are many theories about who Mona Lisa is, and I'm going to tell you all the theories now. Let's look. So the first theory is she's Lisa del Giocondo, wife of Florentine merchant Francisco del Giocondo. But we wonder why he never received or bought the painting he commissioned for them. Number 2 is Mona Lisa Gherardini, a courtesan, meaning upper-class prostitute. Upon closer look to her clothing, they found royal family symbolism, so this was not her. Number 3, Pacifica Brandano, the mistress of Lorenzo de' Medici, the ruler of Florence. So the other 4th theory is that she's Isabella of Aragon. Not Aragorn, by the way, I know what your mind is saying to you, but she was the queen consort of Portugal and her presumptive of King Ferdinand II of Aragon. She was friends with Leonardo da Vinci, but she died giving birth at the age of 27 in 1498, so I don't know. Why would he make the painting 5-6 years later? The craziest theory probably is the last one. Mona Lisa is actually Salai. Who was Salai? Salai was one of Da Vinci's students who was a male. Time to learn about Salai. Leonardo wrote these words down in his notebook in 1491 for Salai. Thief, liar, obstinate, and greedy. Yet he was going to spend 28 years with Leonardo da Vinci. Salai's real name was Gian Giacomo Caprotti. He was 10 years old when he started working with Leonardo. He was originally bought in as a servant and possibly as a model because he was really pretty, but then trained as a painter. According to Vasari, Leonardo adored Salai's curly hair, but he kept stealing purses, silver pans, whatever he can reach to. This is why Leonardo gave him the nickname Salai, which means little devil. In Milan, he also acquired services of another boy who became central to his life, Francesco Melzi, who was the opposite character of Salai. He was educated, aristocratic, and he was more like a son to him. Leonardo da Vinci began Battle of Anghiari in 1503, but couldn't finish it. Then comes the other famous painting, The Virgin and Child with Saint Anne. Guess what? Yep, unfinished. All these unfinished work was causing Leonardo trouble. Unfortunately, nobody was commissioning him. That was kind of a relief actually, because he didn't want to do that, but he needed money. Besides, his rivals Raphael and Michelangelo were increasing the competition. Especially Michelangelo hated Da Vinci. Secretly gay, Michelangelo was jealous of Leonardo, who was beautiful with colorful tunics walking around the palace with his perfume. He was royal family painter. He had much more freedom than Michelangelo ever had. Once actually, in the middle of public, Michelangelo humiliated Leonardo, reminding him he couldn't finish a sculpture in 12 years. I told you this story would come up. Leonardo was not proud of this and felt so embarrassed. Why couldn't he finish his works then? What do you think? He spent a lot of time in nature, testing scientific laws, dissecting bodies, both human and animal. Actually, he dissected 30 human bodies in his lifetime. Pretty impressive. While he was doing these, he was constantly taking notes and recording his observation. He invented the bicycle, airplane, helicopter, and parachute, some 500 years ahead of their time. Sigmund Freud said once for Leonardo, like a man who awake too early in the darkness while others were still asleep. So true. According to Da Vinci, art and science form a synthesis together. He also distinguished between painting and sculpture in the most interesting way. Listen to this. He says, manual labor involved in sculpting distracts from its intellectual aspects, whereas the illusionistic challenge of painting, meaning working in 2 rather than 3 dimensions, requires more knowledge of mathematical and optical principles than the sculptor. Da Vinci left Italy for good in 1516 when French ruler Francis I offered him the title Premier Painter and Engineer and Architect to the king. He was provided with a country manor house, the Chateau of Clou, near Amboise in France. He died here in 1519 at the age of 67. Melzi was right next to him. Salai, on the other hand, had left France for Milan a year prior. Leonardo, in his will, left Salai only half of a property in Milan, leaving the other half to Melzi. Also, he left the country manor estate and all his belongings to Melzi as well. Definitely, Salai seemed to be already cut off.
Denied.
He was buried near Saint Florentin Church in Amboise, but French Revolution ruined that area, so it is impossible to know right now where his grave is. So that's the story of Leonardo da Vinci. What a great man. If he had lived 67 more years, I wonder what he would find out. Well, we will never know, I guess. See you next time. If you like this video, and if you feel like it, you can hit the like button. I'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching my video. If you like my videos, please don't forget to subscribe. And for my real-time narrated tutorials, visit my Patreon, patreon.com/Ece Gurler. Stay with art and love.